Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marino. So pumped to be joined by Jim Turvey as well as Michael Fiddle. This is our semifinal preview, and round one was just awesome. Even though all four higher seeds swept, we got some great games. 3 of 4 dogs covered in game 2. And guys, before I ask for your best bets moving forward, I do want to get a quick reaction of what we saw to close round 1 and how we think that could impact here going into round 2. So Jim, I'll start with you. Some general thoughts.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I thought some of the dogs that were really close in game 2s were going to pull through. When we talked in the playoff preview I did with Matt, I was debating placing Atlanta Dream to make it to a third game. I was thinking that the Fever were very live in their series. I think it was really impressive that the 4 best teams just went out and got it done at home, because we talked about how weird those series get if it has to go to a game 3 and now you're the better team and you're on the road fighting for your life. I think maybe in the future I would like to see it so that, if you battle like the Seattle Storm, they battled all season. They're the 5 seed. They don't even get to play a home playoff game. It's really kind of a bummer. But with the setup as it is, the better teams, I do think these are the 4 best teams in the W. They all won, they all advanced, and now we're set up for what should be an awesome semifinals.
Yeah, totally agree. And Fiddle, I thought the Dream put up a valiant effort, a lot more than what I expected from them against the Liberty. But then, our closing night of round 1, I thought it was a pretty sick finale, if you will, between the Fever and Sun. Fever certainly made it interesting depending on the number. I believe you had Sun minus 5.5, so it worked out for you. I know some others had like Fever plus 6.5. So both sides, depending on the number, got some action last night.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, is getting the best number and then having these moments where you hit a little Fiddle's middle and it lands on the 6, and it doesn't matter what side you played. But in terms of a first round reaction, and specifically to that Fever Sun series, did surprise me how well Marina Mabrey did kind of at the point guard for the Sun and initiating a lot of their first actions of their offense. Now, she gets traded to the team mid-season. She's generally more of a floor spacer. But in terms of this matchup going against the Fever in round 1, they used her as length and physicality on defense and said, we're going to use that size to our advantage on offense. So they put Mabrey at the 1, which was surprising to me, and it worked out really well. So I was impressed by that with the Sun. We will see if that lasts going against Courtney Williams and the Lynx here. I think that's a little bit of a tougher task.
So the addition of Mabrey continues to raise the ceiling of the Connecticut Sun. I feel like she has solidified herself in my mind as one of the best scorers in the league. And not only can she score at all 3 levels, but she is clutch. Like, she made clutch baskets, that basically won the series for Connecticut. So this is going to be awesome. So coming up here, we have the top 2 offenses in terms of points per game with the Aces and Liberty. And then on the other side, we have the top 2 defenses in terms of points allowed with the Lynx and the Sun. So looking at our notes here, Jim, I know you have more picks on the series themselves. And it just so happens that, Fiddle, you have picks on game 1s, which is kind of perfect. So why don't we just start getting we like to get the best bets out in the open so everybody knows where everybody stands, and then we'll break it down. So Jim, give me your best bets for these series coming up.
Yeah, for the I'm going to lead with the Liberty Aces. I think that's the one that, is going to be front of mind forever in the finals rematch. My best bet there, it's going to be, can't believe we're doing it again, Maria. We're doing it again. I'm falling for it. Liberty minus 155, and then I'll sprinkle Sabrina Ionescu top score at plus 550. And then for the other series, I have another top scorer. This time I'm going with the favorite. I'm going with Nafisa Collier minus 165. And we go with a little funky, Fiddle rocking the shirt. For those not watching video, go check it out. Sweet Nafisa Collier shirt. And then I'm going to go with a little, one of these little prop bets you can do. Series to go 5 games plus 156 in that Lynx and Sun. Those are my 4 best bets for the series futures.
We all want that series to go 5 games ticket to come true. Let's all please hit that.
It could very well come true, but Fiddle, give me your picks for these 2 game 1s, which are coming up on Sunday.
So we will talk through them a little bit more in more detail, but first round favorites go 8-0 straight up. I think I'm going right back to the well. I played Liberty -2.5 when it was there. It's out to 4.5 now. I'm actually going to explain why now would be the time to come in on the Aces side when we break that game down. But I do like the Lynx -4.5 against the spread. So I'm on both +4.5 with the Aces now, -4.5 with the Lynx at the current numbers, and we will break those down in more detail.
All right, sounds good. Can't contain my excitement. Let's start. I feel like we got to start with the finals rematch here. And full transparency, Fiddle, there is a reason why I needed to have an additional voice on this podcast to make sure that Jim and I weren't too, jaded by our postseason past. So for those who maybe just started listening to Buckets WNBA this year, going into last postseason, Jim and I definitely leaned Liberty over Aces, and that's clearly not what transpired. And a big reason why, I think, is Breanna Stewart just didn't really perform the way that we have expected her to perform, over her career, and just pulled some quick numbers. But last postseason, she just shot uncharacteristically well. Unwell, I should say, 35.8% from the field, 19.6% from three. And if you look at her three prior postseasons with Seattle, in which she made similarly deep runs, averaged 50.6% from the field, 47.9% from three. So there's a lot of other things that went into it. The Aces obviously were stacked. They were motivated. They deserved to win. They were the more aggressive team. Becky Hammon, I think, was the better coach in the series. So all credit to the Aces for getting it done. But we're back here. This is a new year. It's a new series. And the Liberty were the best team all season this year, which was different than last season, where they kind of had to catch up to the Aces. This time they started at the top and they never really wavered. So the series price, we're seeing the Liberty favored at around -155. As Jim mentioned, and then you can get the Aces to win this series at around +134. So with all that being said, Jim, let's get your sort of thesis as to why you are riding with the Liberty here, and our friend Sabrina, who really showed out in game 2 against Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out really well. This is such a big rematch, and it's one that, before at the start of last season, I believe it was the first W Buckets episode, we talked, it was like a season preview of 2023, and we said, is there a reason to pay attention beyond these two teams? And we said, yes, obviously, it's an awesome league, but at the end of the day, we're going to have these two teams in the finals. We felt pretty strongly about it. It came true. They were the two best teams all season. The Aces in particular last season were kind of the hands-down runaway best team, with the Liberty in their first season as a super team being very, very good, but not the historical levels that the Aces were. Now we get to the finals. The first two games the Aces take. The third game the Liberty take at home. But it looks like it's kind of going towards the Aces. And late in that third game, we get Chelsea Gray's injury. She is out for game 4. It seems like a perfect spot for the Liberty to take advantage of home court, at least force a game 5. They don't. They lose on their home court. The Aces get to take the trophy. Asia Wilson, who had finished, she got that famous 4th place vote in the MVP. She lost the MVP to Breanna Stewart. Stewie, we talked about this several times, just really did not have the playoff performance. You set the stage earlier with it. The shooting numbers were down. She just didn't look herself. Everything from that suggests, if these two teams are still facing off, what makes you come to Liberty? Well, I'll say a few things that make me come to Liberty. One, this is the second season of their super team combination, and the Aces, it is now they are going for their 3rd straight title. We've seen how hard it is to win 3 straight titles, let alone a 3rd straight title that's coming at the end of a season that was so cramped because of an Olympic schedule where 4 of the Aces players were key contributors to a USA gold. The Liberty have shown all season that by net rating, they are the better team than the Aces. And really, ever since Candace Parker got hurt midway through last season, it's been Liberty, if not, a tie between these two teams. And this season, straight up, has been the Liberty have been better. Bringing in Leona Fibic is a huge X factor. Length everywhere. A very key player who now, as we come to the postseason, has taken over a starting role. Looks like Sandy Brondello is not messing around at all. So really, if the case for the Aces comes down to two things for me. You either are saying, I need to see it first. We saw this happen last year. We saw Liberty take the Commissioner's Cup game. We saw them set up well, and then they lost in the finals to an Aces team that was without Candace and without Chelsea Gray. I want to see it first. That's fine. I'm not gonna if that's your argument. That's a tough one though for betting, because if you need to see it first, you're gonna miss a lot of good winners out there. The other side of it would be A'ja Wilson is the best player in the series. Now, I think that is a fair argument to make, and very often in basketball, the best player wins. However, against these Liberty with Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones in the front court, one of the best defensive front courts in the league, A'ja has averaged less than 20 points a game over the last two seasons. So if you kind of neutralize the top threat, if you say, there was mitigating factors in last year's finals, and this is the second year with the Liberty, at a minus 155 number that is not a heavy favorite, and now they have home court, I'm fine being on the Liberty side of things. I just talked for like 20 minutes, but there's so much to break down here. I had to get all my talking points in.
This is why we do this, okay? And I'm glad you brought up the A'ja Wilson, numbers against the Liberty, because that's really the only thing giving me pause here is that A'ja is just the most dominant player. And it's just a little scary, right? I think maybe I have a little, PTSD of just, A'ja clearly just sort of taking over and the Liberty not. But what is on the Liberty side here is that extra year of experience, is that extra confidence. And you already said it, but Leonie Fibic to me is a freaking game changer. She is just, everywhere defensively. She's, 6'4". She can knock down the three. I mean, she's been an absolute just like revelation, in my opinion, for the Liberty. Last year, they had Maureen Johannes, who loved to go off against the Aces, but she wasn't necessarily doing anything on the other end. So that's kind of like I think a swing plus home court. And, last postseason, the Aces as the number one seed, they had, I guess, an easier road. This is weird now because this is their meeting round 2 as opposed to the finals. But you mentioned the 4 Olympians on Team USA, 6 Olympians overall, if you include Megan Gustafson and Tiffany Hayes. So something else to consider. Now, Fiddle, this is where you come in, okay? Because I need
me not to be confirmation bias or something?
Yes, I need look, I think that we've been, Jim and I have always, I think, been, fair and honest, and, some people probably call us biased. I think we have gone with what we've seen. We've used numbers to back it up. But I still would like another party, a third party here to chime in. So,
to make sure this is not confirmation bias, we invited the person whose first job in sports was working in the Barclays Center for the Brooklyn Nets and being around the Liberty all the time and shooting T-shirts into the crowd. Actually, I wasn't the guy that shot the T-shirts. I was the guy that handed the T-shirt to the guy with the gun. Even less cool.
Okay. To be fair, I totally forgot about that. But also, full disclosure, I have not bet this series yet. And Fiddle, I know you technically don't have a best bet on the series, but would love your opinion.
Yeah, let's break it down. I think Fibic is the real key ingredient if we're going to separate last year from this year. Continuity of the players, more depth. And the fact that once they brought Fibic in, I don't know what the exact record is, but I think they've lost 1 or 2 games since she's been in the starting lineup. They're like 20-2. It's ridiculous. Like, she's a perfect fit. It's very reminiscent of when the Celtics brought in the perfect role players to complement their stars, right? So, and that was the key piece. And it might be the same players that we talk about, but it's really the role players that make a large difference. And moving, Hamilton out of the starting lineup, being able to bring in Burke off the bench. Like, the Liberty team are so deep, and they finally have the depth to match with the Aces. When we talk about the Aces side of it, I come from the perspective of, A'ja's just going to dominate regardless because she's A'ja Wilson. And it was Chelsea Gray finding her step back against the Storm, which was pretty amazing to see. It was Kelsey Plum starting out game 2, 6 for 6 or 5 for 6, knocking them down. MFing the crowd. It was unbelievable. Right? Clear MF to someone in the front row.
Yeah.
And then a fan get kicked out of the Fever Sun game. So a lot of fan interactions with the players. That's how you could tell the WNBA is more physical than the NBA because of what's happening on the sides of the courts too. But anyways, ultimately, do you mind if I go right into game one, Maria, with this take?
Sure, go ahead. Let's do it.
I do think this is a Liberty series. I don't have that many strong opinions either way. We could talk about the basketball. These players are all amazing. My basketball opinion, and I watch all the games, is not strong enough to beat the book's ability to price markets. That's kind of my approach to betting. I love the game, so I will study it back and forth. It is fun to bet into because now I'm going to entertain myself and watch it. But I'm not going to bet into my opinions. I'm going to bet into what is market value. So when these lines open for game one, they throw up the Liberty at 2.5. And I had to play that immediately because you have to factor in home court. You have to factor in that they're better power rated. And through the first round of the WNBA playoffs so far, we don't have any games that switched home court advantage. We have no pricing yet for what the home court advantage is worth in a series this year. It is usually about 4 points each direction. So if the Liberty are -2.5, you would expect Aces to be like -6.5 at home. And that immediately was just off based on power rankings. You knew that these teams are much closer. And if we understand what the value of home court is, that line had to take steam. Then you see it go to 3. You see it go to 3.5. You see it go to 4. And each time the number kept showing up, each half point was a move. It was not we're going to close this down at 2.5 and reopen at 4. That's a line move, but it's also a repricing. Oh crap, we were a bit off the market. Seeing action at 2, action at 3. This means Liberty actions coming in. 3.5, action at Liberty. 4, probably split action. Then some of the books start to get to 4.5, right? So we had DraftKings and FanDuel literally just boom, 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 boom. You were watching it move in real time within 10 minutes of these lines opening and that the Aces game ending. And then what we see is the 4.5 immediately start to come back the other direction. And you call that a resistance point. So once it's reached 4.5 and it starts getting bet the other direction, and now there's 3.5s and 4s back in the market, okay, we have reached our point where the market has reached its efficiency and we know what the price point of this game should be. So my opinion is if you see anything different from a 3.5 or a 4, that's good value right now. And there is 1 4.5 remaining at BetMGM. And even though I'm on the Liberty 2.5, I also played the Aces 4.5, and it is the same way we started this podcast with the Sun 5.5 and the Fever at 7. You don't necessarily have to play them equal, but you set yourself up for positive value on some of these middles. If you didn't get that initial 2.5, I would still play the Aces plus 4.5 because it is the best number that will come up for this game.
Always an education when we have Michael Fiddle on the pod. I appreciate it. Okay, even though, Jim, you're not, I don't think necessarily betting aside here in game one, I do want to hear your reaction to that number.
Yeah, well, I actually think it's really interesting because Fiddle is he's looking at, how the market is moving. And one thing I thought was really interesting is you led previewing these by saying that these are the top 2 scoring offenses in this series, top 2 scoring defense in the other. What I thought was very interesting was that the lines for each of these games, the Aces and Liberty line opened very high, got bet down instantly. The line for the Sun and Lynx opened very low and got bet up instantly. So they kind of moved towards the middle. The over at Bet She Wins, we like the under for the one that was too high and the over for the one that was too low. So I do think it was another one. I almost want to hear Fiddle's thoughts on the over and under and that move as well. I don't know. Were you keeping an eye on that too, Fiddle?
Yeah, I completely agree with both of your opinions there. Listen, I'm not going to come on the podcast and say those moves are incorrect in my opinion is correct. So for a game line to come out, and I think the Aces Liberty one at DraftKings dropped at at FanDuel dropped at 166.5. DraftKings comes up at 164.5. A 166.5 for WNBA playoff game as the intensity increases. That almost felt that one to me when we talk about is this action versus is this a repricing? And then we saw FanDuel just pull the line, come back a full point lower, pull the line, come back a full point lower. Like those moves were not half point intervals. FanDuel knew they were off market there and had to catch up. So I almost think that quick movement is, oh shit, we put the number too high. And then there's still some movement to even say 164.5 might have been too high. And I think the number is universally 163.5 right now. I'll pull it up. But
I think I just saw 162 and a half
Wow.
yeah,
right
there's
before we started
162.5 with VIG to the over. There's 163.5 with VIG to the under. So there's really, and not even a single 163 on them. Or DraftKings has a 163. 163 is the right number for this game. So if you got above it and an under, you're great.
Well, yeah, and by the way, when I was quick research prior to this recording, I saw that the under is 5-0 in the last 5 head-to-head meetings between the Liberty and Aces. If you didn't know, New York has won all 3 games in the regular season straight up, but basically moot. One of those games was without Chelsea Gray, one was without Asia Wilson. But by the way, Aces 10-1-1 against the spread in their last 12 games. I feel like they really, really surged toward the end of the regular season, which was a little bit surprising to me because I remember thinking back at when we were analyzing their schedule, after the Olympic break, they had one of the tougher schedules actually coming out, and they are definitely peaking at the right time. But one other thing I want to talk about here, Jim, is Sabrina Ionescu, because I do think when we look at the Liberty and Aces in general, and sort of, I think another, credit to the Liberty side of things is I really think Sabrina has evolved. And what I like about her is she is not deferring anymore. I think last season it was a little bit like, okay, I got the MVP on my team. Even that last possession of the finals, right? Where did the ball go? To Stewie. And I don't know if you replay that now that ball goes to Stewie, especially if Sabrina is hot. And she's just to the point where she likes to get going in the first quarter. We've seen it. And you like her as the top scorer at plus 550. So would love just a quick thought on that before we move to our other semifinal series.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting looking at some of the matchups in this series about who's going to be guarding who. And I mean, the pivotal one is Asia Wilson versus Brianna Stewart. That is what's going to, those are the 2 of the 3, maybe the 2 best players in the W going head to head. But they kind of mitigate each other. Like we talked about, Asia averages fewer points, Stewie averages fewer points. Sabrina and Kelsey Plum, it's kind of the opposite. Neither is an outstanding defender, and both love going off against the other. And Sabrina is coming off a game in which maybe was her best game of her career. Shout out to Miles Ehrlich. We're always shouting out our buddy there. He was saying he thinks, and he covers the Liberty, he thinks that is, considering the stakes, the best game that she has had in her career, potentially at this most recent game. So now she is going into this Aces series with, like you said, much more aggressive. She's able to score going to the basket. Her 3-point shot is locked in. I think that with these 2 power forwards guarding each other in this series, the potential is there for Sabrina or even a Kelsey Plum to be the leading scorer in the series. I went with Sabrina because I'm on the Liberty side in this, and Plum has been a little bit more inconsistent at times this season. Sabrina's shot did waver a bit after the Olympics, but I think at plus 550, getting Sabrina to be the top scorer here is one that I'm going to be looking at for if you want to, almost think of it as a ladder to the Liberty. Because I think if she is the leading scorer in the series, I have a hard time seeing the Aces winning the series as a whole.
It's interesting, even though Sabrina's 3-point shooting, which by the way, her last season was a historically great 3-point shooting season, even though that has dipped a little bit, I actually think that bodes well for her sort of being the go-to player, because you saw in the game 2 against Atlanta, when you need a bucket, sometimes you got to just go to the rack. And before, I think she would make a lot more threes because she would get dished the ball a lot more. And I saw Lucas Kaplan actually tweet about this, her 3-point percentage is better when Courtney Vandersloot is on the floor versus off, right? And it makes sense. She's not having to be, do everything. She's able to, catch and shoot more and that sort of thing. So I just think her ability to attack the basket now, in short, helps her be able to take over games. So, all right. Is there anything we have missed in this Liberty Aces preview, or should we move on to the other series? Anyone?
I think that stat about Bree Stewart's and John Quell's defense on Asia makes Jim's point that Sabrina leading scorer is a nice boost. Kelsey has been inconsistent. That's why I mentioned she started out great in game 2. It's because she's been pretty inconsistent all season. And then I just think when it comes to the way that teams defend Sabrina, she's too fast and she has too much range and the liberty of too much depth for her to be double teamed. She comes so far away from the basket that if you're going to go out there with her, she'll kill you with a pass. And Caitlin can do a pretty similar thing, but Caitlin's teammates aren't as proficient. So it's nearly impossible to double Sabrina. And so defenses often go towards Brianna. And so if the Liberty win, I do think you see Sabrina's top scorer. So I like that, Jim.
Okay, I'm not nervous at all. Everything's fine. Let's move on to our second series here. And this is another good one. I mean, I really don't think we could have gotten two better matchups here in round 2. It's the 2-seeded Lynx against the 3-seed, the Sun. I'm seeing the Lynx at around minus 220 on the series price. Sun around plus 184. Season series here was a little bit different. Minnesota was 1-2 straight up, 2-1 against the spread, but each of these games decided by 5 or less. They just played a great game on September 17th where they were both battling for playoff position, and Minnesota won by 2 points. By the way, 2 of those 3 games went over the total a little bit surprisingly, including the most recent. This total coming up here on Sunday around 155.5. Couple other fun facts for you before I get your guys' opinions. We have 2 of the playoff leaders so far in 2 key stat categories. Nafisa averaged 40 points per game in round 1. She was, oh my God, just dazzling. And so she averaged 21.6 against the Sun this season, but one of those games she got hurt. So she only had 9. Then you have Alyssa Thomas, 13 assists each in of those round 1 games. And, she averaged almost 10 assists per game versus Minnesota this season. So just a star-studded matchup. I guess let's start big picture series here, Jim. And you like this one to go the distance.
Yeah, I wish I could credit who it was. Someone pointed out on Twitter that we have like the 4 best players in the W. They're all power forwards. They're all going to be guarding each other. It's absolutely amazing. So we had Asia and Brianna in the other series. Now we have Fee and AT guarding each other. I mean, yeah, Nafisa Collier has been absolutely. I think she's been the story of the playoffs so far. One night after going for 38, she one-ups herself somehow, goes for 42, ties the WNBA playoff record. Honestly, if it was a close game, I think she probably would have gotten the record because they would have let her maybe get those free throws at the end. End of both games, she could have used free throws to get near records. But to me, you point out the season series. Even that 5 point, so we had an overtime game, we had basically a buzzer beater from Bridget Carlton, and then the third was a 5-point game. Even that 5-point game, it was a 5-point Sun win in which Nafisa Collier went out hurt. So I think even that you could theoretically say was an even closer game, before that injury. So I just think this is going to be one of the closest series that we're going to see. Now, the market does not seem to agree with me, and this is, I don't know, Fiddle, if you watch series prices and how they move, but when you just said the number there, Maria, you said Lynx minus 220, Sun plus 180. That rang a couple alarm bells for me because I had seen Sun at around plus 166 earlier today, and I was intrigued by that number, to be honest. I didn't make it my best bet, but I was intrigued. But now if it's plus 180, that means the market's going towards Minnesota. So maybe I'll actually use this as an excuse to throw to Fiddle about kind of market looks on games or even the series in particular.
So my read on this series, the game 1 price, I think it's -4 and 4.5. I think it's pretty much going to stay there because of the low total, right? We said this is 2 of the best defenses in the W. You can't project a favorite to cover a 6-point spread when there's only going to be 150 points scored in the game, which is, 10 to 15 less than your standard W game. So for that reason, there's only so much length that the Minnesota Lynx can take in a game spread. But I do still think they're the clear favorite and the right side on a series angle. It's the home court, which is a big advantage here. And it's also a strength of competition. I think we have to realize that the Sun are now going on the road after 2 home playoff games where they played a team in the Fever. No disrespect to them. First playoff game for a head coach.
Yeah.
First playoff game for Aaliyah Boston. first playoff game for Caitlin, or playoff series, first 2 playoff games for all of their 3 most important pieces, right? And I think they had like 25 playoff games combined as a team going into game 1. And it was hundreds on the other side, right? DeWanna Bonner, top 5 all time in the WNBA in scoring. So it wasn't that much. You have the home crowd, and you have completely new environment for a young Fever team. Now you go on the road and you go to Minnesota, where they also have a great home court advantage, and their offense can just generate very consistent looks. That's why I struggle to back the Sun here. Sometimes their offense gets so stagnant, and yes, their defense is great, but they will play 3 feet off Alyssa Thomas. They will let her shoot that one-handed, free throw elbow jumper. They will, try and close out on Mabry because they have a lot of speed and size themselves. It's a different level of defense that the Sun are going against. The Sun are not putting up 93 in a playoff game against the Lynx. It's just not happening.
Very, very intriguing. This is tough for me because I guess I totally agree with everything you said, Fiddle, about the matchup. What gives me pause is one, just sort of the toughness factor. Like, it's so interesting. I think Nafisa versus Alyssa Thomas is almost a microcosm in that Nafisa is just toughness, and I'm sorry. Well, I guess they're both tough, but I would say Alyssa Thomas is toughness. Nafisa's more finesse, right? And I think that's kind of a microcosm of both of these teams as far as at least their different offensive styles, because something that, Jim and Matt Moore talked about on our original playoff preview is the dreaded shooting variance, of the Minnesota Lynx, because they're such a, 3-point reliant team. So any response to that, Jim?
Yeah, I think I'm a little closer to thinking that this should be almost a pick 'em if it was on neutral court. Now, the Lynx having the home court is definitely a big advantage, especially in a series that, my best bet is for this to go 5 games. However, I think if you're getting plus 80, 180 in a series that I think is going to go a full game, like this game 1 price is not going to be Sun plus 180. What is the price right now, Fiddle? Do you have it up for game 1? What is the Sun money line?
The money line for the Sun right now, I'll find the best price, but I do think of a 4.5 spread in a game series says that it's pretty much a pick'em in terms of power ratings, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes the home court advantage. The best Connecticut Sun price right now is plus 185 at DraftKings.
Oh, so that's interesting. So maybe the way you do it, if you want to be on Sun, is wait it out and try and just get it to a game 5. Now, game 5 might be tricky. It might be scary to play game 5 on the road. But why I think it's so interesting about this, I think it's going to, obviously Fee and AT is the marquee matchup. And I do think AT's physicality can really give even Nafisa Collier, someone as skilled as her, some problems. I mean, we saw, Damaris Dantas is it's Temi Fagbenle, I think, is no Nafisa Collier. But there was a possession in last night's game where Alyssa Thomas just played defense for 24 seconds and then just shouted to the arena because she's like, "You're not getting past me. You're not pushing me around. You're not scoring. I'm going to make you throw up some garbage shot." It was awesome. Now, Nafisa Collier, a little bit more skilled, but AT is one of the best defenders in the W. What I think might be the pivot spot is the center position. Brianna Jones is one of the most kind of historically underrated. Like the advanced stats absolutely love Brianna Jones. I'm not sure that she's going to be able to play all that much this series. We saw her kind of get played off the court, even against the Fever with their spread offense. Now you get Alana Smith at the 5, who's one of the best spread 5s in the WNBA. I'm not sure Brianna Jones is going to be able to play all that much. I think if you're on the Lynx, you want Alana Smith to really be taking advantage of that matchup. She, in those 3 games this season, she shot 13 for 20 from the floor. That's an incredible. She needs to take even more shots. If I'm Minnesota, if I'm Cheryl Reeve, I'm saying I want Alana Smith spreading it out, shooting open looks. If Bree Jones is on the court, I want her, catching it on the perimeter and either shooting or getting around Brianna Jones and creating offense. What's up, Fid?
I need to jump in here, Jim, because I love that. And it's very true. And you look how well Nelson Adota played coming off the bench, filling in for her in the Sun Fever series. And she is more athletic and can space more. So you have to, I'm pulling up. I loved it. I pulled up the Brianna Jones props as we're talking, under 11.5 on her points prop. Very interesting. I'm going to pull up her.
exactly where I was going to go. I was going to go with Brianna Jones points unders and Nelson Adota points overs if we were to get them. That'd be a pretty niche book, but I'm with you 100%, Fiddle. I think that's an adjustment that's going to get made throughout the series.
So tell me what you like more. Do you like the 11.5, the under more, or do you like the 4.5 of a rebounds under? But I'll split the difference here and tell you that the rebounds is plus 102 to the under, even though it's a low number. So you get plus money, whereas you're paying minus 115 for the points under 11.5.
I think I would take the points. The 4.5 rebounds is pretty low. Now, Jones isn't the biggest rebounder in general, but also if she is staying on the floor, it's going to be against Alana Smith and the Lynx, who aren't a great rebounding team. So she could even get a couple rebounds in a shorter amount of minutes. So I would definitely go the points route there.
Love it.
I would just like to say, as you guys were talking this out, I was digesting what Fiddle was talking about with Lynx minus 4.5, and I'm leaning more and more that way because of how emotionally taxing this closeout game was. I think this closeout game was for Connecticut. I mean, that was a kind of a stressful environment. I mean, I was stressed out watching it. I had to go take a walk when that game ended. But just thinking about now having to get on the road and thinking about you talked about the playoff experience. I'm like, DeWanna Bonner is 15 years older than Caitlin Clark. They're
chasing her around everywhere. You also have there's 2 hours of time zone difference here. You're going to be playing the game at what is going to be 9:30 local Connecticut time at night. There's other factors here that just make this a tough spot for the Suns.
Yeah, whereas the Lynx on the other hand pretty much cruised to victory in their game too. So I'm just leaning that way even more. We are going to get out of here momentarily, but Nafisa top scorer, Jim, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, when you're averaging 40 points a game in the playoffs, it's relatively self-explanatory. But Collier is one. I mean, this is if you go to the other side of things, I mean, for Minnesota, it's maybe a Kayla McBride gets hot shooting, or Courtney Williams, who I do think is going to have a really strong series. I'm going to look to play her a few ways as well. But if I think this series is going to go longer, that's the series where I like to go with a favorite more than if it's a short series. I'd like to go for a long shot because the less variance, the longer the series goes. And for the Connecticut side of things, if anything, I think the most interesting hedge to Nafisa Collier as the favorite is Marina Mabrey at plus 1,500 as the series point player. Bonner is who's listed as the favorite for Connecticut. She's only taking 12 field goal attempts a game in 31 minutes a game in the postseason so far. I don't think that's correctly priced. So that only adds to the fact that I think Fee is, should be the prohibitive favorite. And then if you have the second favorite who's mispriced, it makes it a really juicy market. So yeah, I'm all over Fee for leading rebounder, which is really nice, minus 165. I would take that with a fair amount of wiggle room.
I love it, but I also love the idea of a little sprinkle on Mabrey just because at that price, I feel like it's fun. And I think DeWanna Bonner has just been sort of inconsistent. Alyssa Thomas definitely has picked up her scoring in the playoffs, but she's not going to be.
Her ceiling isn't very high. Yeah.
Right. And she's obviously, I already talked about just how much she's facilitating. What else? What else am I missing? Fiddle, any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, while I have Jim here, I just have to throw him props lines and say, if we're back in Courtney Williams, right? And we're saying, if the Sun try and do this thing where they play with a ton of size again, Courtney Williams, because you're anchor to break them with speed. So we look for maybe Courtney Williams over on points at 10.5. I've been playing a lot of Courtney Williams under 5.5 assists because of the way the game lines have been trending for the Lynx, and just a lot of unders have been coming. And if they're not going to need to push the ball on offense, then just go for the under assist. Trick to prop betting: if you want to fade points, do it in the assist market, because assists are only come on certain scoring opportunities. So you get, when scoring drops, assist drop precipitously. So I've been playing a lot of Courtney Williams under 5.5 assists, but now I feel like is the time where we flip that route and we go over 10.5 points instead.
Yeah, I have in my notes Courtney Williams points plus assists. So I'll do you one, but I'll play the combo stat. I like it as the points. I like it as the assists, but I do think I lean a little bit towards the points. And that's when I do the points plus something, you do have to kind of like the points more because they're going to be twice as much, right? Say she goes for 12 and 6. The points are a heavier weight on the points plus assists. So I really like to pick out those combo stats when I'm most confident in the points. And this is the case where I like Courtney's points. I like her assists. I like the points a little bit more. So I think the points plus assists is going to be a bet that I'll have, most games in the series.
Lovely.
I love
Thank you,
it.
Jim. I'm gonna take add 2 more best bets onto the episode for me. Courtney Williams over, Brianna Jones under.
I love those.
Courtney Williams over, Brianna Jones under. And this is great. Again, this is why we do this. I love when we get a little workshopping on the pod. We're talking through some things and some game scripting and all of that. All right, one final question before I let you guys go. I know, Jim, you probably have long-term sort of positions on maybe the Liberty to win it all. Fiddle, I'm pretty sure you have a Lynx like plus 600 or so ticket. I remember talking
900. Don't cut me 50% like that, Maria. I'll cut you in. I'll give you it, and then it'll essentially give me plus 600.
I'm sorry, I should have checked with you first. But I just remember, several weeks back, like we were talking about when you were kind of getting ready to take the Lynx. So good on you. But if you're coming to this episode and you don't have a future, any recommendations, Jim?
I think this market's really sharp. I actually really have not played all that many title futures this year. I'm actually kind of amazed. That's usually my favorite thing to do. I just really haven't found places to do it. I think grabbing the Lynx at the number that Michael got was perfect. I think it's a really good play, and it's going to be really potentially very leverageable. I still think the Liberty, if you really just for some reason want to make a bet today that's going to pick, bet on the title winner, I think getting the Liberty at plus money, I think the winner comes out of this Liberty Aces bracket, side of the bracket. And I really don't think that, the Sun in particular, they've kind of sniffed out the Sun in terms of actually winning the title. I think that they definitely could win this series. I do not see the Sun being able to win the final. But the Lynx intrigue me. But again, they're priced in about a way that is intriguing. Yeah. So I think if I want to be on anything, it would be the Liberty. But I think it's a really sharp market right now.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I don't like taking futures this late in the game. The reason to take futures is because you're forecasting movement. The reason why I jumped in on the Lynx had nothing to do with the Lynx, just noticing that they were pretty much locked into that 2-3 side of the bracket and that the Aces and the Liberty were going to meet in the second round, right? So I was just forecasting the playoff picture to get ahead of it. Now that we know the playoff picture, now that we have game markets, now that we have series markets, going over to the futures markets would be a great thing for the sports books and not for the bettor. I have some fiery takes about how much I just genuinely don't really like futures betting, but I will save that for another time.
Okay, well, nonetheless, once again, a great lesson there. I mean, I don't think that there's a ton of value right now in that market, and you might as well just play the series prices. So this has been an absolute blast. Not that I expected anything less. Jim Turvey, Michael Fiddle, thank you for joining.
She expected WNBA. 20 minutes less. I'll say that.
I apologize, but look, we were just cooking so much. We couldn't shut up. But thanks everybody for listening. The pod will be back Tuesday with more bets and to react to the first day of second round games. Enjoy the weekend, everybody, and let's get buckets.